Today I'm painting a picture of my backyard, actually the garden spot on the side of the yard, and it's just gorgeous this time of day. So I'm going to get started right now. When I looked at this scene, I realized that one of my favorite parts of it was the fact that this kind of old, disheveled hammock vase that's hanging on the clothesline is adding to the landscape here. I've been watching the shadows change all day, and they've stayed relatively the same color, which means the light has stayed relatively the same color as well, which is nice. That means I've been kind of gathering my thoughts the whole afternoon in preparation for this painting. A lot of times I have to go quickly to capture the lighting, and that's definitely the case now. I'm just kind of playing with different layouts. As much as I would like to get it exactly right the very first time, that doesn't always happen. So I think I've already got more or less what I want. I'll play with that a little bit as I go along. Now I'm going to start to add color. It doesn't look like much yet, does it? Alright, first things first, I'll do the sky. And first I just need to get a general light blue in there. And then I'll change it if it needs to be changed. There's definitely some kind of tan or yellow. If you were to say that this is the light blue, pure light blue, then this is comparatively a little bit more yellow or tan. And of course the camera is not seeing it the way that I'm seeing it, because I'm seeing it this way up in the lights and this way down at the darks, both at the same time, and the camera just simply can't see that. But in real life, it's fun to realize that, you know, your eyes are so much more capable than a camera lens. And that's what's really cool about paintings, is they are a representation of what the artist really sees, rather than just a skewed version through a camera lens. There are probably some cameras that can do a pretty good job, but the best camera on the planet probably can't see quite the same as the human eye can, and it certainly doesn't process things the same as the human brain. So I've emphasized that orange tan color in the sky maybe a little bit more than it is in real life, but I am setting the stage for how intense the rest of these colors will be, which I'm going to get into right now. And without washing off my brush, I'm just going to go straight into the yellow tones of the ground, yellowish brown. And right now I'm squinting eyes half closed, at the scene, trying to judge how light this part is compared to that. It is a little bit darker, but still quite light compared to the shadow area down here, as you can see. And I first do a generalization, and then I go back in and perfect it. The little nuances of color. And there are some halftones where the shadow starts to encroach upon the light. I absolutely love painting from life. There's absolutely no substitute. There's no way to capture, for me, I'll speak for myself, there's no way to quite capture the subtleties of nature and of light from a painting or from a photo in the studio. I just, I don't know if I lack the ability or if my brain just doesn't want to, excuse me while I move this, the wind is blowing it in my way. Or if it's just more fun, you know? It certainly is more fun. It's almost like a game to see if I can capture exactly what I see with my own eyes in real time and in real life. I've got to get that tree color in there before I go too much further. It's not much darker than the grass. I can't paint and talk at the same time sometimes. Certainly a different color, but roughly the same value. Sorry. Needs to be a little bit more green. I like that it's a little bit more green at the bottom than it is at the top. And I actually have yet to see a tree that's the exact same tone all around. So I like autumn when those subtleties and changes in color are more obvious. It's just a lot of fun. All right, now we need to get into blocking in the shadow area. First, I'm just establishing the difference in value. So how dark this is compared to how light the other parts are. I don't always paint this soft-edged. In fact, I rarely do. I frequently paint a lot more bold, thick brush strokes. I'm just going to move that. But something about this scene just makes me want to respond to it with a softer touch. Just a little bit. And maybe I'll get into some darker colors in a minute, but for now it just seems to want to be painted this way. And that's one of the things I like about painting from life, or plein air painting as it's called. Is I get to respond more to the painting itself than if I were in the studio. Frequently I find myself overthinking things when I'm in the studio. And out here there's just simply not time, and I feel like it's such a quintessential experience. In other words, all 5 of my senses are being stimulated, and hence the word quintessential, 5. So I'm not, the visual side of me is not being over, or it's not taking over, because I can smell, I can hear, I can feel. I can certainly feel today it's freezing out here, quite cold, which is also another reason for me to hurry. So it actually works in my favor. Alright, things are quickly changing, but I will try to remain true to my first impression of the scene, which is difficult to do, actually. Very difficult. Okay, let's see here. Make a quick assessment of the situation. Alright. I've got rows of cabbages and kale over here that I think make such beautiful blues against the otherwise kind of more brownish or earth-toned areas in the scene. And throughout the year, throughout the growing season, I've really enjoyed those colors, and they almost seem unnatural, and yet they are natural, obviously, and they fit perfectly. They're such a nice I don't know what the word is. Perhaps I don't even know what the word is. Perhaps you do. It doesn't matter though. I think you know what I mean. It just sets everything off and makes it more interesting. These purple cabbages are pretty cool. I'm really just, my impressionistic style of painting is, in my mind, more of just a lot of estimations of what I see. I'm very aware of what I'm seeing, but I'm not in any way trying to paint every last detail. I'm just, I don't know, I'm almost trying to say it with as few words as possible, which in a way is exactly opposite of what I'm doing right now, which is talking while painting, which hasn't always been easy for me. It's taken a lot of practice and keeping up on it to be able to talk while I'm painting, which is certainly better when teaching a group of students or making a video. Some of you may find yourself getting dizzy with my method of videography, but I've had far more compliments on it than I have requests to change, and this seems to work better for me anyway. So I think for those who are really wanting to learn, this is probably the best way. And plus, it's so interesting just to see how an artist mixes paint. I say that because I've watched other artists mix paint, and it's very fascinating to me. Okay, I'm going to dip into the purple and mix it with some brown tones and a little bit of green for the browns, or the shadows in the tree. And it needs to be a little bit more warm than that. I'm going to mix into the yellow and mix some brown into that. Kind of get a color that's halfway between what I had and what's already on the canvas, or on the palette. A little more brown still for this area. And it's a lot more Let's see. A little more purple. On this side. And I'm still feeling like it needs to be painted in a more loose, soft brush stroke than what I might normally do. I really don't like trying to force myself to paint a certain way. I don't want to be true to my style from last week just because I painted that way last week. I want to be completely authentic, which in my mind is to respond only to the situation at hand. Granted, that's a little bit harder of a sell where I'm trying to make a living at it. Well, I've been making a living at it for a long time, but collectors of art like to see a consistency. However, I feel like my consistency is defined by my authenticity rather than the particular brush strokes that I use in a certain painting, which I think is very I don't know, maybe less thought-provoking, certainly less authentic. Just my thoughts. Now in the studio, I find that most paintings that I do in the studio are consistent with each other. It's too dark there, I'll soften that in a minute. The ducks are coming closer. As you can see, we're working on the house. And there's always a mess when you're working on a house. Okay, well, I want to definitely include this dead sunflower, but in order to not cause myself grief, I need to definitely paint the mountains before I do that. And because I'm doing this one-handed, I'm going to just set my brush down and grab my other brush. However, if I had both my hands, I would probably just use that one brush, and that may be a little bit unique. Not many people see artists work with just one brush in a given painting. That's not a gimmick of mine. It's not anything I chose to do or did on purpose. I just find that more often than not, I don't need a second brush. And in fact, it becomes a hindrance to have to grab a second brush. Not all the time, but I'd say most of the time. And for me, I'd rather just make that one brush work for me by, I've got a wide one there, there we go, a wide brush there, I've got a skinny one there, and if I am careful, I've got, I can kind of chisel the edge and have an extremely fine line. That's not a great example right there, but you get the idea. In the studio, I may choose to make a larger version of this, and it probably won't be exactly the same as the small version, because with the small version, the plein air version, my one and only goal is to be authentic true to the scene, I should say, rather than authentic. I'm always trying to be authentic, but trying to be true to this particular scene on this particular day. And so I'm not trying to add any flourishes. I'm not trying to do anything special other than just record it. And that's the challenge, and that's the goal. Let's see. It might work with just that brown. Maybe a little bit of yellow. Don't have much clean yellow left. Let's see. I need to compare that to, you can see it when it's out of focus easier, but I need to compare that to that. About the same value, but the mountain is more on the pink side of things rather than yellow. Let's see. Adding red to it may or may not work. Those are powerful colors, those red and yellow. Cadmium colors. Yeah, that's better. I'm doing a lot of my mixing on the canvas itself. Makes it easy to get some halftones, some subtleties, things between shadow and light. So I'm trying to get a finished painting, one that I feel is truly finished, rather than just capturing brush strokes that mimic the colors. I'm trying to really get my brain to go through the whole process of finishing this painting. That way, if I choose not to do a bigger version in the studio, I still have this as a very finished representation of what I saw before me this evening. And that is where the value lies for me. It's a true representation. And I can tell you, I value my studies, these plein air pieces, far more than my studio pieces. Because my studio pieces are, they're just, a well thought out copy of a photo. Of course it's, I've honed my talent to be able to do it in a certain way. But this is where I actually do hone my talent. My ability to paint in the first place. And then I can, go into the studio and crank out a painting if I need to. It's a little too dark there. Just add a white. See if that works. Yeah, that'll work. It's quite an intense color as I'm seeing it. And my shadow line, remarkably, has stayed roughly in the same place still. But it won't stay that way much longer. Hey, buddy. Just add a little bit lighter area there on the leading edge that's catching the most light on the mountainside. I definitely need to go more purple in those shadows though. On the mountain. This is about the stage of the painting where I'm humbled. It seems to happen almost on cue. You know, I get about halfway through the painting, or more. Well, I guess I'm definitely more than halfway through the painting, but I think I'm doing fine. And then I realize that I have no clue what I'm doing. Just like I did when I first started painting at the age of 14. And this is where I start to learn things, at this moment. Before this, I go largely, you know, it's all subconsciously, but I'm going largely on what I know to be true about a landscape in general. And then I start to see things and start to commit things to memory about this type of landscape in this type of lighting at this time of year. It's all very, very particular. You know, no two landscapes are alike because the light is never quite the same, even in a single location. But I'm starting to see in this particular instance how much warmth there is, how much purple compared to, or I should say rather than blue, is in the shadows. That seems better. Alright, my hands are starting to get pretty cold, so I'm going to have to really crank on this thing. You can get a few of these buildings back there. I like old farm buildings, and need to get the right color though. A little more brown. There we go. I'm overlapping where I thought the horizon should be. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can capture the color of... Oh, not way too dark. There is a haystack back there. One of my favorite subjects to paint. Only because it reminds me of home, of growing up in a very small, simple town, and it's where I developed my love for landscape. The scene has changed an amazing amount. Don't know if you can see how much it's changed. I'm gonna grab for my big brush and see if I can finish this up in just the next few minutes. So there's that sunflower. I always hate the idea of putting in random spots, whether in foliage of trees or anything, because there's a pattern to all elements of nature. I'm trying to mimic the pattern of it, the personality of that particular one. If I don't get it right, it won't actually look like a sunflower. And if I really want to challenge myself, I'll try to get it to look like that sunflower without actually making it. particularly detailed. I'll put a little bit more shadow in the background. There we go. Getting a little bit more chunky in there because I'm working faster, which makes me think I should have been. I always go through the same thought process every single time. I think, why didn't I paint the whole thing faster from the beginning? But, you know, it's part of the learning process, and it's part of responding to that scene. And maybe that's exactly what I needed to do, was to just do what I felt was right at the time. It's like in life, you know, sometimes a certain path can be the right way to go at a certain time, and then you'll find yourself wondering why you chose that later, only to realize far later that you needed to go through that in order to get where you were now. So I think I needed to go through that painstaking, slow process so that I could arrive at this point in this painting where I'm going quickly now. You can see how I'm getting very small brush strokes with this large brush. Just using the edge of it, and gotten used to knowing sort of what thickness of paint I need in order to more easily do a small shape with the brush, because the consistency of the paint really does make a difference. That's in the background there, but hey bud, it's freezing. I love you, bud. Dinner will be ready soon. All right, well, that's a little too light, but whoops. All right. Wow, look how much has changed. Good grief. That's the way it goes, though. All right, I'm gonna put some real dark darks in the foreground here. Hey, Alex.
Is that tree?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Oh. I'm cold.
Yeah, it is cold out here. I almost did this without a coat on. Glad I didn't. Let's see. Need some little bits of red in here. Just a tiny, tiny bit. It's interesting how little spots can give the impression of detail without having to really paint detail. Broccoli plants. I'm mostly just dipping into my Pthalo Green and Purple right now. Let's get all these darks. There's so much purple in nature. And the sooner an artist learns that, the sooner they'll be happy with what they're capturing. If truth is, you know, what you're going for. You capturing the true to life colors. Ooh, changed a ton again. Look how dark the lights in the mountain have gotten so dark. And those, I'm not sure. Maybe I want to change those. Maybe. As long as I'm aware that I'm changing them away from what really happened. Well, I can see that one there needs to be a little darker. And perhaps just the texture. Well, maybe not. Just overlap the tree properly. Alright, I do want to get this hammock in. That was the first thing I mentioned, and it's going to be the last thing I do. Let's see. I'm switching back and forth with my brushes, even though I said I don't like to do it. Probably mostly because they already have a certain color on them, and it's easier for me to do that, to reach for the one that has the more similar color than it is to wash my brush, because I'm in a hurry. Yeah, I'm just kind of picking up these, I might call them muddy colors from my palette, but there's really no such thing as a muddy color. It's just, when people say that they are painting a muddy color, particularly in oil painting, people are always saying that it's just getting so messy. And it's true, it can get messy, but as long as you put the right temperature of color in the right place. So in other words, if I put this slightly blue mark on top and these, quote, muddy colors down below, then it works. And if it was a different lighting situation, then those rules would change. But typically when you have I should say always, if you have a relatively, and it's all relative, if you have a relatively cool light shining on your subject, then the shadows are going to be comparatively warm, and vice versa. Alright, I'm going to put my tree stump there. It's an old apple tree that we really tried to save, but it just wouldn't have it. And for now, until it rots anyway, makes a nice post for the hammock. I can't believe it's held up this long. There are some fun shapes in there that I don't want to make stand out too much, but I think I can do it in a subtle way. In a way that will show off the personality of that stump, but not take away from the main players of the scene, which are, the tree and the mountains, that area up there. This whole thing down here is just serving to shine a spotlight on these things. It may not have done that justice, but in other words, somebody would look at that and say, what is that thing? And maybe if I were to put another post in there, it's a terrible place to put it, but you're right on the edge. but maybe that'll make it more believable. Yeah, it certainly makes it more believable. So I can just repaint in a suitable background there. It's not the perfect. Not the perfect representation yet, but maybe I can remind myself of the essential parts so that I can do a better version of it in the studio. I'm not taking any photos of this scene. Of course, I do have the video. If I really need to, I can refer to that later. But as many times as I've said that I would in the past, I just never do. I never refer to a video. And I prefer not to really refer to a photo if I can help it. Although I almost always do when I'm doing portraiture or figurative work. So I'm satisfied with this part of the scene right now that I've painted. Just kind of make that stand out a little bit more. Alright, that to me looks more like a hammock than it did before. And I think the last thing I need is to get the white tops of some of these buildings, because that just is a nice contrast. And I've got so much, I'm just going to have to wipe my brush off. Just a casual wipe off. Get some nice thick white. Introduce a little bit of yellow into it. It's not very clean, but it'll work just perfectly for this. Maybe a little bit more pure white than yellow. And if it's nice and thick, oh sorry, I wasn't even showing you. As long as it's nice and thick, see, I'll do it on several other places, so that's okay. See, it just goes right on top. And that one's a different color, so I let it mix a little bit with the other colors underneath. Yeah, I kind of like that now. Now I'm just going to fix my overlapping areas on the tree. The light has essentially disappeared. Oh my goodness, isn't this beautiful? Oh, let that change. Look at that. Wow. I love this peak over there. Very cool snow patterns that are always changing throughout the year. Maybe I'll repaint this scene again with some of the clothes. But not tonight. My left hand, the camera hand, is almost frozen to the camera. Let's see, I almost forgot what I was doing for a sec. Oh, too dark. There we go, that should do it. Needs to be a little bit more yellow, a little more brown. Just trying to get the foreground element here, which is the tree, to overlap the background elements. Otherwise it just kind of looks funny. Just wiping off my finger there. Okay, well, it is basically done, and there's just not any time left to do anything with it. So I guess that means I am done. And actually, if I spend too much time on it, I'm probably going to ruin it anyway. Probably a lot of you who are artists could relate to that. If you overwork a painting, it usually loses its Awesome see, I told you I can't talk and paint at the same time. Still can't think of the word I'm going for. Anyway. Okay. I think I'm gonna call it now. Alright, thanks so much for joining me. Hope you've enjoyed that process and that you've maybe learned a tidbit or two. Look forward to your comments. I hope you have a really great rest of your day and happy painting and have a wonderful time with your family. And I'm going to go do the same right now. Bye-bye.